you solve this minute mystery from 1932? Let's give it a try. Professor Fordney was hunting in the Rockies when informed of a tragedy at one of the camps. Thinking he might be of some help, he went over, and, after introducing himself, Butler, the victim's companion, told him of the accident. When Marshall hadn't returned to camp at 9 o'clock last night, I was a bit worried because he didn't know these mountains. There wasn't a star out, and it was dark and moonless, so I decided to look around for him. We're 5 miles from anyone, you know. Putting more wood on the fire, I set out. After searching for an hour, I was coming up the slope of a ravine when I saw a pair of eyes shining out at me in the dark. Calling twice and getting no answer, I fired, thinking it was a mountain lion. Imagine my horror when I reached the spot, struck a match, and saw I had nearly blown the head off Marshall. A terrible experience. I carried his body back to camp and then walked to the nearest house to report the accident. "How far from camp did you find Marshall?" asked Fordney. "About a quarter of a mile." "I see your right hand is bandaged. How do you manage to shoot with it?" "Oh, I use either hand." "Mind if I look at the gun?" "Not at all," said Butler, handing it over. European make, I see. Had it long?" "No, it's rather new." "Why did you deliberately murder Marshall?" demanded Fordney abruptly. "For that is what you did." How did the professor know that Butler murdered his companion? Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will upload the answer shortly. Did you solve a mini mystery from 1932? Let's see. This is the solution to the puzzle called A Crack Shot. It was a dark, starless, moonless night. The nearest habitation was 5 miles. The eyes of no animal ever shine in the dark unless there is a light by which they can be reflected, and a man's eyes never shine under any circumstances. Therefore, Butler could not have possibly seen any eyes shining out at him in the dark. It was clearly murder. Did you get it right? Can you solve a minute mystery from 1932? This one's called The Poison Murder Case. "I'm going to the theater now," Bob Cooley told Professor Fordney at their club. "I wish you'd spend the evening with Uncle John. He's been worried lately." Upon reaching the Cooley home an hour later, Fordney found the butler in an agitated state. "After ordering coffee, Mr. Cooley locked himself in his library an hour ago, sir. When I rapped on the door just now, he didn't answer." The 2 men forced the lock and found John Cooley on the floor, an empty strychnine bottle at his side. The terrace door was open. After a careful examination, Fordney returned home. A few hours later, Bob Cooley entered his living room. "Thought I'd stop in on my way home. Don't you think Uncle John looks worried? Your uncle, Bob, is dead. Strychnine. Your butler and I found him lying on the floor, but were too late to save him." "How horrible, Fordney! Why was the library door locked, do you suppose? That puzzles me. Has your butler been with you for long?" "For years," replied Bob, his head buried in his hands. "Well, you're a wealthy man now. What of it? Uncle John meant more to me than all the money in the world." "I wish I could believe that," replied Fordney. "You'll need a better alibi than those," he said, pointing to the ticket stubs Bob was nervously fingering. How had Cooley aroused the professor's suspicions? Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll be back with the solution. Did you solve this minute mystery from 1932? Let's see. This is the solution to the poison murder case. Unless Bob Cooley had returned home after telling the professor he was going to the theater, he could not have known the library door was locked. The fact that he did, coupled with a strong motive, naturally directed suspicion to him. He inadvertently gave himself away. Did you get it? Let's do another minute mystery from 1932, and this time let's do a tricky one. As in, I'm not sure if anybody's actually going to get this. It's called A Strange Kidnapping. "I haven't the faintest idea why I was kidnapped," said Johnson to Professor Fordney, an hour after he returned home. "I never miss Sunday evening services, you know, so I'm afraid I haven't much time to discuss it now." "Oh, just a brief account of your experience is all that is necessary," remarked the professor. So Johnson proceeded. "I was walking along Burnham Street about 2 a.m. Friday when 2 masked men with drawn guns ordered me into a blue sedan. I was blindfolded and gagged. After driving for about an hour, I was led into a house and down some stairs to a small room where they removed my blindfold and gag. They took off my outer clothing and hung it on a chair. Then they questioned me at length about the Shirley case and refused to believe I knew nothing of it. Exasperated, they threatened to kill me, and when I remonstrated, one of them hit me on the head with a blackjack and I went down unconscious. The next thing I knew was when I came to with a terrific headache. I lay still for a few minutes and, hearing nothing but the ticking of my watch, I cautiously got to my feet and groped for the door, as the room was in darkness. Before I could locate it, 2 men, still masked, entered, turned on the light, apologized profusely for the treatment I had received, and said they had mistaken me for someone else. Then they gave me something to eat, blindfolded me again, and drove me to within a block of my home, still apologizing for the mistake. Before I could remove my blindfold after getting out of the car, it had sped away. It's all very mysterious to me. I can't make anything of it. "I won't give you away, Johnson," smiled the professor. "Your wife undoubtedly believes your yarn, but you better think up a better one next time." What flaw did the professor find in Johnson's stories which proved the kidnapping was a fake. See if you can get it. Let me know in the comments. And again, I'll be back with the answer soon. Alright guys, here's the answer to the minute mystery called the Strange Kidnapping. Had Johnson wound his watch immediately before 2 a.m. on Friday, the time of his alleged kidnapping, it would not have been running Sunday afternoon when he recovered consciousness and said he heard it ticking. No standard make watch will run 60 hours without winding. Did you get it? Can you solve this minute mystery from 1932? It's called Murder at Coney Island. Inspector Kelly and Professor Fordney were seated in the former's office when policeman Fanning and his charge entered. After Fanning's hurried explanation, Jasper told his story. I'm the ticket taker on a merry-go-round at Coney Island. This being Saturday, we had a big crowd. The trip was almost over when I reached out saying, "Ticket, please," and I see this woman sitting up in the middle of the chariot with that terrible look on her face. She didn't answer, and when I shook her, she slumped over in the corner. I screamed, jumped off, and ran for the manager. I got blood on my hand when I shook her. Yes, sir, she'd ridden a couple of times, and I seen the man she was with on the 2 rides before, continued Jasper, giving a detailed description of him. I happened to see him jump off right before I got to her. The doctor said she had been stabbed through the heart and had died instantly, queried Professor Fordney. That's right, sir, replied the policeman. It seems strange, Jasper, remarked the professor, that you can give such a good description of this woman's companion on 2 previous rides when you just happened to notice him jump off. Does the merry-go-round ever make you dizzy? No, sir, I'm used to it. Well, Inspector, said Fordney, turning to his friend, I suppose you are going to hold this man. Certainly, replied Kelly. That's just about the dizziest story I've heard in a long time. What justified the police in holding Jasper? Let me know your guesses in the comments, see if you can figure it out, and again, I'll be back with the solution shortly. Did you solve the minute mystery called Murder at Coney Island? Let's find out. Jasper said he found the woman sitting up in the middle of the chariot. The motion of the merry-go-round would have made it impossible for a dead body to remain upright in the middle of the chariot. All right, did you get it? Can you solve this minute mystery from 1932? This one is called Strangled. 22 days of this hot, dry spell, groaned Professor Fordney. I can't remember a stretch like it. Tell us about the Greer case, Professor, urged the rocking chair brigade. It'll take your mind off the heat. Well, you know the salient facts. The body of Irene Greer, lying on the railroad right-of-way, was found half a mile from here by a fishing party at 6 a.m. day before yesterday. It could be seen that she was a beautiful girl despite the tousled hair matted with mud and a nasty bruise on her cheek. Her flaming red dress was torn and dirty. She had on shoes but no stockings. Incidentally, her clothes were of the finest quality. Her body indicated that she had received a terrific beating, poor girl. From appearances, she had been placed on the track with the expectation that she would be struck by a train and identification made impossible. No doubt she was unconscious when this was done, but she must have revived temporarily and crawled to the gravel right-of-way before a train came along. There she died. A peculiar circumstance is that, while her body was bruised and twisted, there were no marks on her throat to indicate strangulation, yet Dr. Bridewell says that that was the cause of death. She was found in a desolate spot. Oh, yes, she was probably strangled with a scarf, which, employed in a certain manner, would leave no outward trace. Now you folks should know how I learned Irene Greer was attacked elsewhere and then brought to the vicinity where she was found, smiled the professor. Do you? Leave your guesses in the comments. Be sure to follow me so you don't miss any updates or further minute mysteries, and I'll be back with the answer shortly. Did you solve this minute mystery from 1932? This is the solution to the puzzle called Strangled. There had been a hot, dry spell at that place for 22 days. Irene Greer's hair was matted with mud, therefore she must have been attacked elsewhere. Did you get it? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. Can you solve this minute mystery from 1932? This one is called A Hot Pursuit. Hello, Smith, said Professor Fordney as he opened the door. What's up? Uncle Fred's house has been robbed. He had some negotiable bonds in the library safe and told me to stick close to home until he returned from New York. Were they stolen? Interrogated Fordney. I'm afraid so. I was up in my bedroom about 20 minutes ago when I heard a noise. I rushed downstairs just in time to see a man dash out of the library. I ran after him and, as I passed the door, I noticed the safe was open, so I suppose he got the bonds. He jumped in a waiting automobile and I trailed him in my car, which, fortunately, was standing in front of the house. But he got away from me. Did you get his license number? No, couldn't see it. When I lost him in the traffic, I drove right over here. Didn't you keep the house locked while you were upstairs? Yes, but the burglar chiseled open a cellar window. Well, let's go over and have a look, suggested Fordney. When they reached the Smith home, they found the bonds gone. Did you lock the front door when you ran out of the house? Why, replied Smith nervously, the door locks automatically. I don't know what Uncle Fred will say when he gets back. He'll say plenty if you tell him the story you told me, interrupted the professor. I suggest you put the bonds back. Where did Smith make his incriminating slip? As usual, let me know your guesses in the comments. I want to know what you think, and I'll be back with the solution shortly. Did you solve the minute mystery called A Hot Pursuit? Let's find out. Smith said he ran after the burglar. Had he done so, he could not have known the cellar window had been chiseled open. Therefore, his story was obviously faked. Did you get it? Can you solve this minute mystery from 1932? This one's called Murder at the Lake. Here's all we've been able to learn, Professor. I wish you'd see what you can make of it, said Sheriff Darrow. Garden's cottage fronts the lake at a point about halfway between the head and foot of its mile length. A strong east wind off the lake that morning caused him and his two guests to abandon their proposed fishing trip. Garden remained behind while Rice and Johnson set off hiking in opposite directions. Rice said that 15 minutes later, as he was retrieving his hat which had blown into the lake, he heard a shot and hurried to the cottage. There he found Johnson with blood on his hands bending over Garden, who had been shot through the heart. Johnson said he had gone only about 200 yards when he heard the shot and rushed back. He claims he got the blood on his hands when ascertaining if Garden were alive. He also admits moving some furniture, although cautioned against it by Rice. Fortunately for Rice, we found his hat still wet, but discovered he had changed his shirt before the arrival of the police. He had also gone through Garden's desk, but said he removed nothing. Both men entered through the back door, though the front entrance was more convenient. We haven't found a gun or any other weapon, and we haven't been able to establish a motive yet, concluded Darrow. What do you make of it? It's a bit muddled, Sheriff, replied Fordney, but I would question blank further. Of whom was Fordney definitely suspicious, and why? I put the full text in the caption. Let me know if you can solve the case. Put your guesses in the comments, and I'll be back later with the solution. Did you solve this minute mystery from 1932? This is the solution to Murder at the Lake. A strong east wind blew off the lake. Therefore, regardless of the direction in which he was walking, Rice's hat could not possibly have blown into the lake. The professor was naturally suspicious of him when he told such a ridiculous lie. What do you think? Did you get it? Can you solve this minute mystery from 1932? I'm feeling diabolical today, so I picked a diabolical one. This one's called On the Scent. I couldn't wait to be announced, said George Collins, Florida's foremost prohibition agent, and a great wit, as he stepped into the professor's office. How long are you going to be in New York? Asked Fordney, as the two friends shook hands. I'm due back in Miami now, replied Collins, but I wanted to congratulate you on your success in the Hicks murder case. I wish interesting things like that would happen in my game. However, I did have an amusing experience last December. Sneaky Joe, a stool pigeon, tipped me off to a huge still he said he was working about 40 miles from headquarters. A narrow road through dense woods led to the spot. Arriving there, I found an old dilapidated shanty screened by trees. As I entered the woods, I smelled alcohol. Sneaky Joe was right after all, I thought as I drove up to the shanty. I got out and peered cautiously around, but the place seemed deserted. After opening the door and entering the house, however, I knew liquor was not being made there. I searched the woods, but found nothing. As I was driving back along the road at a good rate, I discovered the alcohol I smelled was coming from my own radiator. Imagine my chagrin. The professor laughed heartily and said to his friend, "Stay over for my birthday party tonight. The ladies would love to hear that yarn of yours." What did the professor find preposterous in Collins's story? Let me know what you think, and if you get it, you're better than me. Did you solve this minute mystery from 1932? This one was really from 1932. This is the solution to the minute mystery called On the Scent. Not even a prohibition agent would use alcohol in an automobile radiator in or about Miami. Did you get that? Okay. Can you solve this minute mystery from 1932? This one is called Midnight Murder. "Who are you, and what's this all about?" demanded Inspector Kelly as he and Professor Fordney arrived at the apartment in answer to a call. "I'm Jack Day. I share this apartment with Al Quayle. I returned from the theater shortly after midnight, went into his room, and found him lying there on the bed. When I saw he was dead, I called headquarters at once. God, this is terrible." "Those your things on the bed?" asked Kelly, indicating a blood-stained muffler, a hat, gloves, and cane. "Yes, I tossed them there before I rushed to the telephone. Got that blood on the muffler when I bent over him." "What time did you leave here this evening?" "Shortly before 7, replied Day. "Can you prove you were at the theater all evening?" demanded Kelly. "Why, yes, I went with a friend." "He's been dead about 6 hours, Inspector," said the police surgeon, finishing his examination at this point. "A deep knife wound, below the heart." As Fordney picked up an earring from the floor, Day explained, "Why, that belongs to his fiancée." "Well, there will be no wedding bells for him," remarked Kelly, with a start as he discovered that Day's cane was a sword stick with a long, thin, shining blade. "Any blood, Inspector?" asked Fordney. "None. Clean as a whistle." "Well, Day looks mighty bad for you," stated the professor. "I don't know yet whether you killed him with that cane or whether you killed him at all, but I do know you were here a few minutes after he was stabbed." How did the professor know? Leave your answers in the comments. I'll be back shortly with the solution. Did you solve this minute mystery from 1932? This is the solution to the puzzle called Midnight Murder. Day said that he got the blood on his muffler when he bent over Quayle's body. As blood coagulates and dries in a short time, it would have been impossible for him to have stained his muffler unless it had touched the blood of Quayle shortly after his death. Therefore, Fordney knew he must have been with Quayle soon after he was stabbed. How'd you do? Can you solve this minute mystery from 1932? This one is called Speakeasy Stick-Up. I had counted the cash, and as I was working the combination to open the wall safe, I heard this guy in back of me say, "Get him up, Bo, this is a stick-up." I reach for the ceiling as he says, "Make a move and I'll drill you." He didn't sound like he was fooling, so I kept quiet. Well, he comes over, gives me a prod with his gun, pockets the dough, and asks me where the best liquor is, saying he don't want no bar whiskey either. I told him, and he poured himself a drink. Then he got real sociable-like, but wouldn't let me take my hands down. He kept on talking and making wisecracks, but finally got tired, I guess. With a warning that if I moved before I could count 20, my wife would be a widow, he beat it, concluded Sullivan. How much did he take? Inquired Professor Fordney, who had entered the speakeasy after hearing the bartender's call for help. About $500, Sullivan replied. We had a good day. Haven't you a gun here? Sure, but I didn't have a chance. I ain't exactly no Boy Scout, but this mug was too big and tough-looking for me to tackle. How did you get that cut on your hand? Inquired the professor, and that bruise on your finger? Opening a case of lemons, answered Sullivan. Well, said Fordney, if your whiskey isn't any better than your attempt at a fake hold-up, I'll have a ginger ale. You're right, the bruise had nothing to do with it. But how did Fordney know the stick-up was a fake? Leave your answers in the comments, and I'll be back shortly with the solution. Did you solve the minute mystery called Speakeasy Stick-Up? Let's find out. Sullivan, the bartender, said that as he was working the combination to open the wall safe, he heard the hold-up man behind him. As he was not permitted to move, he could not have known the gunman was a big, tough-looking mug, as he described him. As there would be no other motive in telling this impossible story, the hold-up was faked. How'd you do? Can you solve this minute mystery from 1932? This one is called Behind Time. Professor Fordney, on his way to investigate a case of blackmail, was musing on the perversity of human nature when a jar threw him into the aisle as the train came to a sudden stop. Jumping off, he rushed ahead of the engine, where he found a small crowd gathered about the mutilated body of a man hit by the train. He was identified by a card in his pocket as John Nelson, an important figure in railroad labor circles. How did it happen? Inquired Fordney. Well, replied Morton, the engineer, I was running 12 minutes late when I hit him. There are several miles of straightaway along here, and I was beating it along at 60 miles, trying to make up time. Didn't see him until we were about 10 yards away, right on top of him. I jammed on the brakes, of course, but it was too late. Did you leave New York on time? Yes, sir, 1:30 exactly. Why were you running late? We were held in a block for about 15 minutes outside of New Haven. What was your fireman doing when you hit this man? Stoking the boiler. You say it was just a few seconds after 4:10 when you hit him? Demanded the professor. That's right, agreed Morton. Did you know this man by any chance? Yes, slightly. He was an officer in my union, replied the engineer with a worried look. Well, said Fordney, I don't know your object in telling such a story or how you hope to get away with it. You won't. What justified Fordney in recommending Morton's arrest? Leave your guesses in the comments. I'll be back shortly with the solution. Did you solve this minute mystery called Behind Time? Let's see. The engineer said he had not seen Nelson until he was practically on top of him. That, of course, is impossible. An engineer of a train running on a straightaway can see nothing as close as 10 yards in front of him. How did you do, detectives? Can you solve this minute mystery from 1932? This one is called A Yachtman's Alibi. I've often remarked, said Professor Fordney in an expansive mood, how very difficult it is to fake an alibi without someone's assistance. A case in point is a messy affair we cleared up recently. I didn't definitely suspect Picus when I happened to bump into him at the 4th of July parade the morning after an acquaintance of his had been found dead under suspicious circumstances. I rather casually asked him where he had been and what he had been doing the previous afternoon about 4 o'clock, the apparent time of the man's death. He related the following story. I took my sailboat out about noon yesterday. It was great on the water. Around 3 o'clock, however, when I was perhaps 10 miles out, the wind died down completely. There wasn't a breath of air, and I knew that, unless I could attract some boat, I was in for an uncomfortable time. Remembering that the intentional distress signal is a flag flown upside down, I ran mine to the top of the mast in that manner. Thank God it was a clear day. In about an hour the steamer Leon hove to, and I went aboard her after securing my boat with a tow line. The captain said he had seen my distress signal about 4 miles away and would put me ashore at Gladsome Landing. He did so, and as there was no one about, I hailed a passing motorist who gave me a lift back into town. Imagine my surprise when I read in the paper this morning that the Leon had been sunk in a storm after putting me ashore, and all hands had been lost. Well, I knew, remarked the professor, that the Leone had been sunk with all on board. After hearing Picus's story, I immediately arrested him on suspicion of murder. What was wrong with Picus's alibi? Leave your answers in the comments and I'll be back shortly with the solution. Did you solve this minute mystery from 1932? Here's the solution to the puzzle called a yachtman's alibi. As Picus said there was no breeze, the distress flag would have hung limp against the mast, and the captain could not have seen at that distance whether or not the flag was upside down. That's all the professor needed to determine the falsity of his alibi. However, Picus was a poor sailor. While the international distress signal is a flag flown upside down, it is by custom and regulation always flown at half-mast. I did not know that. Did you get it? Let me know. Can you solve this minute mystery from 1932? This one is called A Question of Identity. By the way, guys, I always put the full text in the caption if you prefer to read it or just listen to me yap. Either way is fine. Let's begin. Professor Fordney and 3 of his friends were enjoying their weekly get-together at the university club. Professor, said Patry, tell us something about that Yelpier murder case you were working on. Well, gentlemen, he replied in his retiring manner, as you know, Yelpier's affairs were common knowledge, and the fact that several women had reasons to wish him dead complicated matters a bit. His body was found in his study, which opened onto a corridor. At the other end of the corridor, and directly opposite it, a staircase led to the servants' quarters above. Diana Lane, a house guest of Mrs. Yelpier at the time of the murder, was questioned, and she appeared nervous. She insisted, however, that she had been in her room at the time Yelpier was slain. Nora, a servant, testified that, as she was descending the stairs leading from the servants' quarters at midnight, she saw Diana Lane, wearing her famous emerald pendant and dressed in an enticing black negligee, walk down the lighted corridor to Yelpier's room. She said she followed a minute later and heard Diana and Yelpier violently quarreling. She returned to the servants' quarters and, as she opened the door to her room, she heard a shot. In the face of such evidence, Miss Lane admitted having gone to the study at the time, but protested her innocence, declaring she had remained only a minute. While Miss Lane was acquitted, her reputation was not above reproach. Even so, I knew without further investigation that Nora's testimony was maliciously false. How did the professor know? As always, guys, leave your guesses and questions in the comments, and I'll be back with the solution shortly. Did you solve this minute mystery from 1932? This is the solution to the puzzle called A Question of Identity. As Diana Lane was walking down the corridor with her back to Nora, it was impossible for the servant to know Diana was wearing her famous emerald pendant. What did you think of this one? I thought it was kind of easy, but let me know. Can you solve this minute mystery from 1932? Let's find out. This one is called Fisherman's Luck. Having these stones in my possession, Professor Fordney, isn't proof that I had any part in the Morris robbery. I know all about your story, Holmes. Found the jewels yesterday at 3 o'clock in the lake, tied up in a chamois bag, didn't you? But what were you doing out in an open boat in the cloudburst that lasted all yesterday afternoon? It was because of that cloudburst that I sallied forth, explained Holmes confidently. Perfect fishing weather, so I jumped into my boat and went across the lake for some minnows. I had rowed back to within a few yards of shore when I had just happened to notice the bag lying on the bottom of the lake. So I landed, tipped my boat over to keep the rain out, and waded in. Curious, The water at that point was over my waist and cold, but when I opened the bag, my courage and curiosity were rewarded. On which side of the dock did you find it? Asked Fordney. Holmes pointed to a spot on the sandy bottom at the left. Think I'll talk with the minnow man, declared the professor as he got into Holmes's boat. He rowed furiously for about 50 yards, suddenly dropped the oars, and, after glancing from the crystal-clear water to the bottom of the boat, emitted a victorious chuckle. Stupid of me not to have thought of that before, he mused. Wonder if Holmes is a better fisherman than he is a liar. Clever fellow, Holmes. Did his story fool you? If you like this series, don't forget to give me a follow so you don't miss any future installments, and I will be back shortly with the solution. Did you solve this minute mystery from 1932? Here is the solution to the puzzle called Fisherman's Luck. Holmes could not have seen the bag on the bottom of the lake during a cloudburst. The agitation of even crystal-clear water under such conditions would have so disturbed the surface that an object at the bottom could not be seen. What did you think of that one? I thought that was fun. Did you get it? Let me know.